We're snorting cap rates and shooting up cash flow here at Deal Junkies.
Welcome back, Deal Junkies. Deal Junkies. We're here. Half of us are here. Gabe's gone. Dane's gone. They're here in spirit. Gabe got COVID again.
We're just not going to let him come back at this point.
You're gone, Gabe. We don't need you anymore, but we love you. I don't even know what Dane's doing. He wanted to try and be here via Mobily, but we said we don't.
Dane's in Chicago and planning on being in Chicago a lot of weeks. So we're now looking for a fourth host.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to come on, let us know. Shoot us a message. You can come take Dane's spot.
Wow. Just like that. We're a whole new crew.
Sorry, Dane.
Sorry. Okay, well, we got something special today. What do we have today?
So we wanted to talk about books today.
Yeah.
And just books that have impacted our lives, whether that's real estate, motivational books, and just what they are, so you guys have some stuff that you guys can go read or check out, and then share the lessons we've learned and how we've applied this stuff to our lives. Because for me, like, books and podcasts are basically how I've learned everything and like changed my life completely from what I was doing to what I'm doing now. And I'm guessing it's similar for you, right?
Yeah. And I haven't read a book in a while, but you have these periods in time where I like Brandon Turner's statement. Someone's going to put 20 years of their time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears into something you can get for $20.
Yeah, which is insane.
Insane. And significant amount of value from it. And then you go through periods of time of what type of learning and knowledge are you trying to consume? Have you consumed too much? Do you just need to learn from life? And so I think it's a really big process. But just even logging into Audible and seeing all the books I bought over the years is a really fun kind of experiment.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that Gabe is not here for this.
Because he doesn't read.
Because he doesn't read books, and I just tell him about a book, and then he already knows the lessons somehow, some way. So I'm glad we get to talk about this without him.
Yes, let's go. So are we talking... What are we, real estate books?
I wanted to start off with real estate books, since this is a real estate podcast. So I wanted to hear what kind of real estate books got you started. What was the first book that got you start thinking about real estate? I'm pretty sure I probably know what
it's stupid. All Rich Dad Poor Dad like everyone else.
Same for me.
So for me, it was all kind of at the same time. It was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then there was I forget these no money down guys. There's a couple of gurus around it.
Robert Allen.
Robert Allen, yeah. So it's Robert Allen, is Rich Dad Poor Dad, and what?
Crazy story about Robert Allen.
Yeah.
So he has this no money down book.
Yep.
New York Times called BS on like you can't buy real estate with no money. So they followed him with a reporter for 48 hours to see if he actually could, and they gave him $100 to like stay in a hotel room for a night. And he went and bought like 3 deals with no money, with the reporter following him around. And then they posted in the New York Times a story about how he did it.
Yeah.
Pretty sick.
I love it. The other part is the people. I think the biggest thing for me was it was introduced to me by a person. And I, at the time, was 22 years old. It just I had been laid off for a year as an appraiser, and I was going to appraise an 80-acre estate. And the guy buying it was just this calm-looking rich dude. Did the appraisal, and he reached out, and he's like, hey, we need to meet. And so he gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad on CD, and just kind of like, he said, you intrigued me because you were looking at me how other people don't look at me. I wasn't asking questions at the time, but I was like, who is this guy buying 80 acres, off-market deal, really good price, that type of stuff. And so that's how I got into it and read Rich Dad Poor Dad. But the biggest lesson for me is, because it's so vague. It's such a vague book. It's a story. It's not actually...
More of a mindset book, really.
It's a mindset book. But for me, it was... you need to learn financial statements. That's the thing. And it's ringing in my brain so big right now. I'm actually writing something on balance sheets and P&Ls and the flaws of financial statements and then the art behind all of it. So Rich Dad Poor Dad, Bob Allen. But for me, I signed up for so that was 22, bought my first house, got sidetracked. And then when I signed up for Rich Dad Poor Dad, the education, and wrote the check, they sent you a big book. And all it is just a bunch of YouTube stuff, essentially. Like, here's what wholesaling or an assignment is, and seller financing, and a wrap note, and option. And so I learned just a bunch of tools from that. And then the ABCs of real estate investing from Ken McElroy.
Okay. And those are the main real estate books?
Those are the only real estate books I've read.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm complete opposite of you then. So I started out like Rich Dad Poor Dad I heard about in college, and I was like, okay, this is cool. Like there's a way to think differently. It kind of got me started to think about finances at least, and real estate a little bit. And then I was just like, whatever, didn't think about it for years, right? Then I was doing the engineering thing and trying to figure out how to not, and I came across FIRE books, like financial independence books, and I was reading those and started learning the basics of like save more than you spend, invest the difference type of thing, which led me then to real estate books and podcasts. And then I went all in. So I read basically every single book, mostly Audible, and then listened to every single podcast. So I've probably read almost every single real estate book that's like the technical book to this point. And they're all pretty much the same, honestly. So most of them are telling you the story, like you should buy real estate because it gives you all these benefits. They don't really give you anything that actionable in them, other than you're like, that sounds cool, but I don't know what to do next. But there's actually a few books that did give me like actionable next steps. So like mindset books, there's like The Millionaire Next Door, and then you can go on Bigger Pockets too. And like literally you guys can go on biggerpockets.com and download any of those books on a title that interests you. And there's like 20 on there. They're all fine. But there's this dude named Craig Kurlop who had this book called The House Hacking Strategy. And he literally just laid out, it was a how-to manual of how to do this deal type. So I read that book and I was like, oh, I could apply this easily. Yeah. And then just went and did it because he laid out how to do it.
Yeah. Let me read back. My first real estate book was, it was written by a realtor in Portland who randomly was, when I got into real estate or like had to take education classes, there was nothing online. So I had to go to community college and go in person. And so I had my appraisal classes, but I needed to take more credits so my parents would pay for my car insurance because I get the discount. So I signed up for a real estate class. It was taught by a broker. And then years later, when I was getting continuing education, I met him again and then saw that he wrote this book. And at that point, I wanted to buy. And it was like Fizbo for Riches or something, how to get rich off Fizbos. And he was an investor. He was a broker, but he thought like an investor. And so that book was taught about just how do you contact Fizbos and negotiate with them to buy. And what was really cool, again, it's the people are the most important things. Books are great. The people are the important things. Day one of that broker class, I had no clue what I was doing. Day one, he taught an A to B to C closing. That was the first thing he taught, the first thing in class on a real estate agent class. He taught about as an investor how to do an A to B to C closing. So like there's
wholesale, you mean?
Yeah, like a wholesale deal.
Oh, okay.
An investor wholesale deals.
Oh, okay.
You in the middle is B, sell to C. He brings in the funds to wipe out A. And I had no clue what I was sitting in front of and what I was being told for a different type of class. So the people matter.
When you say the people matter, you mean the people teaching it matter, or what do you?
Well, you learn more. So the actionable thing. So there's some books that you can write that are very actionable because that skill works anywhere. House hacking is really good. But the actual, how do you use it in your marketplace, you get from people, from mentors, from coaches. Because not every tool, all real estate is tools. And then how do you implement those tools? And you don't implement them. Every tool doesn't work in every market. It doesn't work in any way. And so how do you implement them? That's taught by people, not by books.
Sure. Okay. The biggest thing, too, with reading these books that I've learned is you can read these books and be entertained by them because they're inspired and whatnot. And none of it matters if you don't take the information and do something with it. Yeah. Like, you literally just need to take one piece from the book. Like, you could open the first chapter, be like, okay, I could do that. Close the book, do that, and you'll benefit yourself way more than reading 100 books. What's up, Deal Junkies? This is Trevor. I just wanted to let you know that we want to help you do deals. Because of that, we put a link in the description of this podcast episode where you can click it and book a call and talk to us. Go ahead and click that link and let's talk about some deals that you want to do or you are doing currently. Which sounds like what you did, because I used to read all these books and be like, oh, that's great, and gather information, and do nothing with it. So, like, did I need to read 100 real estate books? No, it was a waste of time.
Yeah, and again, a piece of your ego just saying, I need to read all these books. When I got into reading, I created a rating system for a couple of years, and I rated them based on how easy was it to implement and how did that implementation affect my life. And then quickly after doing that rating system, I stopped reading books because it got to the point where, what am I reading? What am I trying to learn? What am I trying to get? And continue to read someone else's opinion on the same type of thing doesn't bring value to your life if you're not applying something else. And then kind of where I've gone is, well, I've needed more actual direct one-on-one coaching, or I needed to learn more about economics. I don't go to books for those things. And so again, where you're at in life is really going to determine where you're getting your information from.
Yeah. Have you read many technical books then? Or not really?
Like on real estate?
Yeah, or real estate law, real estate analytics. I'm assuming you've read stuff on economics.
I've forgotten so much of what I've read.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem, is I've consumed so much. I don't know what I've done. Economics has been a lot of online stuff.
Reddit.
And listening to interviews. No, I like to read stuff that's published by really, really smart people that have been making big money decisions. Ray Dalio is a really good example. Just so to people that are actually in the place. I don't like professors. They're great professors, and I think there's adjunct professors are better, right? I want to learn from someone who's doing the things like economics. I wrote something about how I believe opposite of economics right now. I listened to a really good Bloomberg interview from a guy who was high up in JP Morgan. So he's known as, he's an economist, worked for JP Morgan, so that's what he's known for. And his interview was exactly what I think, which is costs aren't driving prices or labor. He's talking more in wages. And so as a flip of the economics books, I would rather listen to someone who says, here's what we're taught, here's what I've seen over decades, and this is why I no longer believe what we're taught. Because he's been in it and he's put his money where his mouth is, and he gets paid millions upon millions upon millions to do what he does. So who's in economic books from 50 years ago or from this guy? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's certain things you do want to read that are old, but there's also...
that have stood the test of time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Because a lot of this stuff, too, doesn't change over time, like real estate, like analytics. Like I've read the actual textbooks on real estate law and and actual the math of real estate analytics and how people are doing all this stuff. And it's the same. It doesn't really change.
And if you go, again, I love history. This is why I like economics and history and real estate. They all go together because it's all development oriented. And then economics is, well, how did the capital stacks get created? If you just go back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, what freaking tools were the cowboys using? Tax deeds, options, right? They're just using these really basic, simple tools. Well, that's real estate. Then we try and take stupid tools and turn them into something, a big marketable thing like wholesaling. No, that's an assignment. That is a really simple tool. It's been used for hundreds of years, but we have to create a marketing package around it to sell education around it. So what I really want to get down to is this a tool that's been used for hundreds of years, or is this a ploy and a business, and they're just trying to use a tool to sell a business model?
Yeah.
And so what I want to learn is what are the tools. And then I want to implement the tools that work in my business model and implement them into my business model. And then I want to recognize what's not a tool, so I don't even pay attention to it. Or is it a tool that I can use later and then shelve it?
Yeah, yeah. And the cool part is there's books on every single real estate topic.
Absolutely.
An endless amount of information you can learn, and then you can go deeper and deeper.
And that's the double-edged sword, what keeps people from gaining traction and momentum.
Because they don't take action on the books. I would say if you're just starting out, though, start gathering all the information and just consume as much of it as possible for 1 to 3 months maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then decide when to take action.
Yeah.
I did it for a year, and I did not need to do it for a full year.
And part of that is really you're trying to figure out where does your personality fit in? Because really there's so many things you can do, but your personality is going to enjoy something. It's going to fit in somewhere. It's going to have its own level of genius and zone of genius. And the experimental phase is really figuring out what is that zone of genius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and real estate books are great, but I think there's a lot more impactful books than real estate books. You can read so many real estate books, you gather information and implement it. But what other books? Because you read a lot of mindset books, things.
Absolutely, by far the best book, hands down, to read is The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And I'll give a really good example of that right now. So something shifted in me in the game of golf in August. And really what it is I was living and you've heard me talk about finite versus infinite mindset a lot.
Book too.
So I was living in the finite game of golf. I wanted to break 80, right? That was a goal that I put on 2 years ago. I didn't break it last summer, so I hired a coach and then I joined a membership. There's been this finite definition of success that I've been chasing, and I've showed up to tournaments and played like shit. my swing is better. My game is everything about me on the golf course is better. But in the tournaments, I'd show up like shit.
Is it because you play with shoes on in the tournament and you
That's
practice
part
barefoot?
of it. That's definitely part of it. And I've cured that problem. But I would show up to Thursdays and play well. Like I play well and people would see like, wow, this, your handicap isn't reflective of. But anyways, we had a bunch of tournaments in August, club championship, and I really wanted to break 80. And I shot the worst score I've shot in 2 years, 2 days in a row. But something flipped. It was kind of the change of the weather, but really what it was, and thanks, shout out to Kelsey for asking me a question today. Allowed me to realize it. I was just in the mindset of a finite game. Once I got past the club championship, I'm like, fuck it. I don't need to break 80. This is fun. And I got into score doesn't matter. Like, what am I playing golf for?
To continue to play.
Yes, but I'm out there to be in nature, to make friends, to get one-on-one time, to do something that's competitive. So all those reasons, the score has nothing to do with those reasons. And once I let the score go, I've been at peace. And I've used the word peace, at peace on the golf course for a month now with a lot of different people. And it's just the shift from finite to infinite mindset. And now apply that to anything in life. You can apply that to anything in life where the finite creates anxiety and expectations and needs and value. But an infinite mindset, you don't need any of that. It takes all the pressure off life when you look at it of, I'm not trying to win, I'm trying to stay alive.
Yeah, because the finite game, like you're doing it, there's a means to an end, and the infinite is you're doing just to continue to do.
Yeah.
Which is like why I like real estate and every activity that I like. You can have unlimited growth potential. It's easy enough to access, and there's like a community involved.
Yeah.
And like if you have those three things, like any activity is pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah. My friend Ashton invited me onto his podcast, The Art of Winning. Well, how do you define, like, to me, the art of winning is not putting a value to winning, not defining winning. Yeah.
Okay. What other books did you like? Or
I like the Purple Cow guy.
Purple Cow guy?
Yeah. The bald guy. He's the marketing guy.
Are you talking about blue fishing?
No. I like that guy's an interesting guy.
Steve Sims, yeah.
Yeah, Steve Sims is interesting.
Blue Fishing's a good book. And let's throw some books out here because I want to throw some actual book titles out so people can go look them up and grab some information if they want. And a lot of these mindset books, too, like it's the same thing. You have to apply the information, same as the real estate books. I like this book called Third Door Down. It was one of my favorite books I've ever read. It was about this kid. He was just a college student, and he was trying to essentially meet a lot of high net worth individuals and just started opening like the third door is the idea of looking farther and outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually like got to the point where he met all these people and ended up buying a ski mountain in his 20s to create like a resort for all these wealthy people that he wanted to hang out with to go hang out with.
Yes. I haven't read that book, but I know the story.
Yeah, it's an insane story. I highly recommend that book, and it'll blow your mind because you'll be like, oh, this college kid who knew nothing did this. Like, I can go do whatever I want.
I read a book that his mom wrote about him and his sister.
Okay.
And they were friends with, like, Jesse Itzler and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Outwitting the Devil. Napoleon Hill is one of the best authors around. So what is his cash flow? He has a very popular one.
Think and Grow Rich?
Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich is amazing. Outwitting the Devil is levels beyond that.
So Gabe loves to quote Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
And he's like, I've only read like the first quarter of it. It's like his favorite book.
Yeah, I like older... The language is really clear with older authors. And The Man from Babylon is a really good example of that. I think I just slaughtered.
That's another really good book. Yeah,
because it's so simple.
Yes, that's the Babylon. Oh man, I don't remember the name of that one either. But
we're slaughtering this.
That's all right. You guys search Babylon book real estate, you'll find it.
Yeah. Outwitting the Devil, whether you're a Christian or not, is excellent just because it's pure mindset and it's read the Audible specifically from two different voices.
Oh.
And we all have it in our brains, the positive voice, the negative voice, and then our reconciled voice in the middle is kind of how I look at it.
Oh.
It's a really good idea to kind of get the grasp of a foundation of a really visionary type thinker of how he breaks those two voices down.
Did you read Jason Dree's book ever?
I did. Do the Impossible.
Did you like it?
Yeah. At the time, I think I got halfway through. That was when I was starting to stop reading, but I met him in Miami, and I read it, like half of it in a day.
Mm-hmm.
There was The Bigger Leap is the other one. The Big Leap. That was better.
Okay.
Um,
So to give me your opinion, because so I did the coaching thing. I don't think I've talked to you about this at
Oh,
all. But I
with
did
Jason?
which is freaking, it's like $1,500 for every 30 minutes or whatever the hell it is.
Mm.
Crazy expensive. So I was like, this must be good if it costs this much. I actually didn't get any value out of it.
Mhm.
I felt like I stopped it. And then as I was reading the book, I was like, yeah, this is getting me pumped up, but it's not giving me anything that I know what to do with. I was like, I can resonate with this, but it's not doing anything for me. And then I felt like his story personally, I was like, I didn't buy into it. I was like, like, you're coaching all these people on this thing because you're a coach, but like, what have you done? Like, I like to see someone that's like done something prior.
And that's a great statement. I think I go into things more with my gut.
Yeah.
I had met him. I know people that have coached with him.
Well, I saw you, Brandon Turner, do it, and
Yeah.
a bunch of other influential people. So I'm like, there must be something to this.
It was Brandon was important, but it was my friend Ian was more of a referral that kind of went with me because of what he did and like how his mindset is around it. You probably didn't get a lot from him because he's an alignment coach. He's not a mindset coach. He's not a business coach. He's more of a get in your head coach.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was in a huge period of transition, and what I saw was spurts of value over a period of time and not a lot of value because you kind of get some alignment, you take action.
Describe his alignment, like how he explains alignment. So
I can't grab my phone.
no, it's
dude.
okay. You're talking
I'd
about
love
the three
to-
circles, frame, right? Set, align.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull this up because it's really. Yes, I can.
Okay, because my explanation from it is just making sure you're in alignment is that you're just on track, aiming at the same thing. So all things in your life are going the same way, and you're thinking positively, essentially. But
yeah, alignment is more of being. It's a clarity. For me, the way I wanted to just say that I kind of created a message around it, and then he had a really good one. But for me, is the bullshit falls off. The anxiety of decisions go away when you're in alignment. Does that make sense?
Because you know what the goal is in the track, so you're just making all decisions based on that path.
Correct. You're so clear on the end result that anything that comes through you from a decision-making standpoint, you're very like, don't even need to think about it. Quick decision, long decision, don't even think about it. And it's a filtering mechanism, right? You have a very good filter that processes quickly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people where you get stuck is you're just not in alignment, and now decision fatigue is so real, and our brain burns more calories than anything else. And I see it with me all the time where I get in the decision fatigue and I just cannot act efficiently throughout the day. And so when you're in alignment, you don't experience that as much.
Yeah, I think what I realized is that I thought I was not in what he calls alignment, but I think I was, and I was just not okay understanding the uncertainty that just happens throughout life.
Right.
I was feeling like I needed to know all of it.
Yes.
I don't feel like he helped me get there necessarily, but I feel like
Because he doesn't help you with that.
Yeah. So I was just like, I was like, you don't seem to be helping me with anything. And then once I was paying $1,500 and he ended a call like 10 minutes in, he's like, got nothing for you today. I was like, what the hell did I just pay for?
And that's and that's a really good thing is, you don't always get a value from a coach. I think sometimes just ending that relationship is a good thing. I remember when I ended my coaching with my real estate coach, when I had an actual real estate coach, and it was super liberating. And actually after that firing, it was more of a fire. And I look back, I'm like, wow, I should have done that so much earlier.
Yeah.
And so I think a good coach actually just lets you know. And
yeah, I feel like they're trying to sell me too hard too on it. And
I would say that Jason definitely does make that happen.
yeah, because I told them all my things, what I was trying to do, and I was like, "Is this a good fit?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's a great fit." And then after first calls, I'm like, "What the hell? Like, this is not a good fit." And then they front charge you all this money for it. I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, and definitely I felt that as well.
Yeah,
yeah, and so that then makes me pull away.
Yeah, I was just like, "This is some BS."
Yeah.
But I wanted to dive, unless you have other things. The main thing we wanted to talk about was like the actual most influential books in our lives, like during the most recent time period. And I have
Never Split the Difference is a super good book.
I've read it. I didn't take that much away from it, but I also read it too early on to when it wasn't applicable.
Yeah, because
to
it wasn't
my current time
applicable.
period.
And seeing him, Chris Voss in person, amazing. BATNA, like again, old versus new. BATNA, or just this area of negotiation. What we used, the old way of teaching negotiation is what's this area of agreement, which I'm all for. You want to find area of agreement. But in high stakes negotiation, no, you ask questions. So negotiation's good. Questions of proposition to yes or no. But how? Use words like how in negotiation. Well, how can I do that? Right? So now you take the math out of it, you bring the emotions into it. And so Never Split the Difference was so more about being aware to everything, communicating to a different part of the brain. Super valuable. The other thing, Pitch Anything. One of the best books I've ever read. Pitch Anything by Oren. It's either Claff or Clapp.
It was a sales book?
Yeah, he's a Wall Street guy, so it's about pitching investments is more of his thing. But again, it's the neuroscience behind it. So this guy has tens of thousands of hours behind pitching. And then he got down to the neuroscience level of it. And this is actually when I started getting more into brain and our physiology.
So what did you take away and apply from this book?
Yeah, stories sell, math hurts, right?
Okay.
So people need to see a
stories.
sheet, they need to see data. And even raising money and finalizing the raise for these 2 deals I'm doing, one of our lenders, he kept saying, I need to see something, I need to see something, I need to see something, but he was committed way before that. And it was because all we did was talk stories, met with him in person. He saw the asset. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do this. And he's saying, I need to see something. And this was going from 1 deal to 2, putting them into one big partnership. And we then created an actual little deck for him and gave it to him. And he looked at it for 5 minutes, asked us 2 questions. And he said, oh, yeah, the money's in my E-Trade account next Friday, which means he already put the sell order in before he ever saw anything. Does that make sense? So the numbers need to be there, but they don't make a decision from the numbers. They make the decision from the prefrontal cortex, from our emotions. They don't let the amygdala get in the way. And when we communicate with numbers and we scare people, we communicate with their amygdala. And they just say no because they don't know what else to say. So how do you get past the lizard brain? How do you get to the decision maker? And how do you get past the lizard brain to the decision maker in a way where you have trust, rapport, understanding of what it is that you're pitching, and then clarity? So that way they're thinking in a informed way, but there's still emotions behind that. So it's storytelling is really what it is.
Yeah. And you use that quite a bit then in all your negotiations now and deal structures.
It's funny because I never considered myself a storyteller. I always considered myself shy. But the main thing I do now as a human being, I communicate via stories. And a lot of that just comes from experience. You have experience and now you have a lot of stories, and then you can see where those stories relate to whatever conversation that you're in. But people love stories. Mm-hmm. Absolutely love stories.
Yeah. Do you have some more other influential books that have been, I think we have some similar ones too.
Shoe Dog. I love Shoe Dog just because of the grit. Phil Knight's story about kind of going through the grit and just the fact that it's in Oregon, obviously.
So I'll give you my list too.
Yeah.
And we can dive into them. I'll tell you what I took away. So I think this is, for both of us, Traction. One of the biggest books most important books. I got Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, and then Alex Hormozy has 2 books, $100 Million Offer, $100 Million Leads. So starting out with Traction, I think you probably had similar takeaways from us. This book is literally just a how-to manual on how to run a business and grow and scale a business essentially and be organized. I've read this book probably 8 times now. Very first time I read it, it was just me. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I can't use any of this information. This book sucks. I don't know why anyone's talking about this book.
Mm-hmm. And then you read Rocket Fuel?
Well, no, I've read Rocket Fuel a couple times, and then that also didn't apply to me the first time because I was just consuming information looking for the answer, which there's not.
There is no
answer.
Yeah.
And that was when I was on my own doing all that stuff. Then it was me and Dane started doing this thing, and I read Traction. I was like, oh.
It doesn't apply if you don't have an organization.
Yeah. So then I was able to apply it,
Yeah.
and we started applying it, and there was so much we were doing so wrong, and it helped us get so much more clarity on what to actually do and why. And then I was like, this is great. We made the most progress we had ever made. I reread it, and I was like, this book is completely different now to me because I didn't understand half the book.
Cars in action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So once
the driving manual becomes different once your car's actually in action.
Yeah. So that was insane. Like if you guys, I highly recommend that book to anyone that's running a business or you got a partnership going and you're trying to run a business. Because you even implemented, that's what sold me when we met you early on. You were doing like the EOS coaching thing too with it and implementing more stuff. What did you think of that and what have you applied from it?
Yeah, and again, the people, right? So we hired an EOS implementer out of EOS, but he had his own specialty, and we had hired interviewed 3 or 4 different business coaches. And so to step back, this point in life had one half-time employee who had just gone full. Property management company had been started, brokerage had been started, but nothing had been implemented. I was running the property management company with the other employee. Tyler was getting his principal broker's license, and we were about to expand. And so I went to business owners that I knew, loved, and respected and just asked them, said, hey, okay, this is the next version of me. I do not know how to hire. I do not know how to fire. I'm not a boss. I don't know how to be a manager. What would you do? And so one guy, Michael, what's Michael's last name? Anyways, he recommended Traction, and I read it and immediately fell in love with it. And then we hired that implementer, and he actually helped us. His specialty was hiring and firing, which is what I needed. He actually helped us interview. So, we were trying to find our integrator and helped us hire that person who we thought was going to be our integrator. And
did they not end up being the integrator?
They weren't the right person for the longevity of the company. They were really good early on to create culture, but they didn't understand the bottom line, and they weren't led to the bottom line. And then we went too wide and got distracted with events and brokerage, and then what are we, and and then changed branding and then marketing.
So your vision was off in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you guys revisit it every quarter too? Like what?
That's
is
the problem. That's the exact problem. Is no, you have to. You have to.
And you didn't.
We met with him quarterly the first year, and then we went to semi-annual, and then
But did you stop doing your internal quarterly meetings at that point then?
We were, the level 10 started falling off.
Oh, dude, that's the biggest. The book says if you stop doing this too, you're going to forget what you're doing and why very quickly.
Yeah, I wish I would have remembered that part of the book. But we were too distracted, and then COVID, and we were no longer in the office, and we just as a executive team got really not connected.
Yeah.
That's terrible for an organization.
Yeah, because they talk about it in the book. So it's like about 2 to 3 months in, you're going to forget exactly what you were doing, why, what was happening. So that's why you're meeting every quarter, and then they give you the whole agenda of things to talk about, things to review, and how to set like the path forward.
Yep. And then the next extension of that is rocket fuel. So EOS is about having a visionary and then having an implementer, a doer, integrator.
Yeah.
So you have a visionary and an integrator, and it makes sense because most visionaries are not integrators. They aren't doers. They're visionaries. Mm-hmm. But integrators aren't visionaries. They're doers. They say, oh, that's the vision. Oh, here's how all that stuff gets done. The problem was the 2 of our owners, neither of us were integrators. We were both visionaries. Tyler kind of got an integrator role at a default. And then we hired someone who was a really good HR, really good office manager, culture creator, but then didn't understand the bottom line. Mm-hmm. Your integrator can't. That's a recipe for lack of success.
Yeah. I was curious, because me and Dane have been debating this. Who do you think's an integrator and who do you think's a visionary between us two?
You're definitely a visionary. I think Dane most people have a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem is you guys are the same as Tyler and I, is you can integrate, you don't want to integrate. Your engineer brain allows you to integrate. Dane's relational vibe, so visionary. But that's fine as long as you understand that and then you have the integrator inside of your system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We were doing our quarterly, so we were running this for Stack with me, Mark, Dane, and Gabe also. We run it with all our companies we do. And we got Gabe on board with EOS, which I was pumped about because he used to call us dumb for following it early on.
Yep.
Now he's all for it. But I was thinking as we were sitting there, I always thought Gabe was a visionary. And Gabe, if you're listening, I felt like Gabe became an integrator for a minute while we were there.
I think he is an integrator. He's a relational guy and then a little bit of both.
Because he's a really good delegator. So if he knows what's going on day to day, he can get everyone on the vision.
But listen to the words he uses. He wants to work. Can't be away from his email, right? He does not talk like I do.
Yeah.
Right? He is an integrator in my opinion, but he's very relational. He is a leader. He has really good leadership skills and he knows how to delegate.
So that is the best integrator though, that knows everything at a high level and is not doing any of the work.
Yeah. And ultimately this is where EOS is flawed. The owner is not supposed to be in the company. The visionary is not supposed to be in the company. Ultimately, your integrator needs to become the CEO, and they are the visionary above of everything they've created, in my opinion. And I've talked to Jason with this. Like, that's really what it needs to become. And so you need to replace yourself as the visionary, ideally with someone who was the integrator that set everything up, because they're still the integrator. You are still the owner. They still talk to you about the vision, but they need at that point to be a visionary, because again, now you're elevated. You should be doing other level of visionary things.
Yeah. Because I learned this when I was doing engineering. Like, so the best project managers that had the best projects, best budgets, everything, everyone thought they were the laziest people because they did none of the work themselves, but they were being the integrator and doing what they were supposed to be, and not doing like the day-to-day work themselves, but managing it all. And that's kind of what I see Gabe do too. So then I was like, as we were sitting there, I was like, I kind of flipped my opinion on what I thought his like skill was and why.
Right. Yeah.
Next book on my list. So Buy Back Your Time. So have you read that book?
No, but the fundamental process is simple.
Yes. Very simple. So that
I do like Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool guy from what I can tell. If you follow him on Instagram, his VA will message you 1,000,000 times a day, but isn't that pretty cool? So the idea of this book is just like buying back your time to stop working in the business so you can continue to grow the business. And like everyone knows you should do this, but this was another like how-to book on how do you actually do this. So it breaks down like what are all the roles like that you can hire out for, and then it has you actually like audit your time. So for like 2 weeks, we were sitting there every 15 minutes writing down what we do. And then after those 2 weeks, you go through and highlight like what are the highest value tasks you're doing, the lowest value tasks you're doing, and then, you know, how can you go hire out that person to take on some of those lower values so you can free up more time and keep growing the business. Biggest takeaway. So we did that. We did the action steps. Biggest takeaway that he has in here is everyone can afford to hire someone, which everyone's roadblock is like, oh, I need to make more first and then I can hire someone. And that's exactly what we were facing. And he's like, even if you don't make any money right now, here's 3 ways you can go get someone to help you.
Yeah.
And that just blew my mind.
Well, and that's the biggest form of leverage. And so he's showing you quickly how to add leverage to your life.
Yeah, with people.
Yep.
Yeah, because you have like capital, content, code, and people.
Yep.
Yeah, insane. So that blew my mind. And once we implemented that, we started growing our team. And then I saw the power of having other people's help, because so many other people are so much better at things than I am.
Yeah.
Like,
you know what's some shitty books?
Sure.
Money the Game, Master the Game, Tony Robbins. Just avoid Tony Robbins' financial books. They're just so basic. Love Tony, but his financial books are terrible. Essentialism, the Disciplined Pursuit of Less by Greg McKeown. Amazing book. Trade-offs. That's where I learned about trade-offs very, very clearly. And every decision needs to be made through the lens of what's the trade-off. When I say yes to here, what am I saying no to? Super good book. Ridiculously good.
Yeah, with the trade-offs, because so you're someone who runs multiple businesses, and a lot of these books say you got to focus on one thing. Like, what do you think about that? Just running one
Absolutely.
business
I look back and I look at the trade-off decisions that we made to expand horizontally instead of vertically. Cost a lot of traction, momentum. And so that's the exact, now that I have full control of all of my companies, I get to make all those decisions. And so the conversation at the top level right now is, what are the trade-offs? We have a 12-year track record of what we have done, how we've built. We've got this past 5-year track record or 2 to 3 year track record of what we've done. And now let's look at the data and say, out of all the decisions that we made, which ones were costly? Where were the trade-offs not known? Where were the opportunity costs significantly greater than I ever evaluated them at? How do we learn from that and then make changes going forward?
Yeah, so because you have the property management company, the brokerage, the development company, like buy and hold, like, do you feel like you should get rid of some of those?
Yeah, here's the biggest example is the property management company. Was we wanted to build out a client portfolio side, so we built it through owner management. We just built a portfolio, and then managed our portfolio, and then got more people and got better and built systems, and well, let's take on other clients. And part of that actually started by flipping some C-class assets to actual investor friends and then manage their property. And we started building this client side, and especially worse off through COVID, that threw gasoline on the fire. But my most valuable person, so my integrator now, my second in command now, Eric, was my property manager. So the most valuable person to my organization was fielding calls with tenants, asking how are they going to get their free money, and landlords, how are you going to get my tenants their free money? Right. So everything, 99% of his ridiculously overblown schedule was providing value to someone who had nothing to do with my organization.
So you're going to get rid of your property manager?
So we sold half of it.
Okay.
So that was the
internal.
solution was, we cherry picked and kept some clients as part of the agreement and had, a 2-year non-compete. But the idea then is, okay, get rid of that, realize some value out of that cash, take that cash, put it back into our business. More importantly, bring those labor resources back into our business and use them more efficiently, and then rebuild it. So then now we can grow in a way that feeds that company into the overall global organism rather than just that company.
Okay. And then how does the brokerage feed into that?
Right now brokerage has just been group coaching. So again, that's part of the distraction. Brokerage isn't even anything right now. And like I even sent a text to Eric, I'm ready to shut the thing down. There's value there. It's part of the brand. But that's where we got distracted, was really what is the brokerage
Because
thing.
you should have just been buying properties, fixing them up, renting them out, and developing stuff, right? That's like your bread and butter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then you're just trying to work back towards that and get there.
Yeah, and again, and I don't want this to sound negative, but that's the problem of having two owners.
It's hard to make decisions.
No, you take on things that you don't need to take on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the point in time, well, we need to grow a brokerage because Mike's got the acquisitions. Mike's got the property management company, meaning I'm running those two companies. The other partner has a broker's license. Well, he should run the brokerage, right? Regardless of, is that the best use of his time? What if he helped me with those other two companies instead? With the portfolio we had to have property management company. That's just stupid not to.
Okay.
But how does brokerage come in? And then the way we really structure brokerage to be group coaching. But then you have all the costs that come along with it, like errors and emissions, and then the staff, because now those brokers need to have marketing and they need to have this. And so now we build this huge staffing around something that really doesn't provide value to our specialty, which is buying real estate.
Yeah.
And like what we did with the brokerage agreement, because we have a completely different brokerage agreement than everyone. And we even put in there that we'll reimburse you your brokerage fees if you bring a deal and we partner with you, we'll reimburse you your brokerage fees. So we're just adding cost on top to our acquisitions.
And that's a lot of work and
weird
time and effort.
Yeah.
You missed out on a lot of deals from spending time on that.
And that's what happens when you don't understand a trade-off and you go into something just to do it because you don't, right? There's no purpose to it.
Yeah.
There's no evaluation to the overall goal. What are you trying to do? How do you define winning? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And at the time, it made a lot of sense. We had the events. We had it. It made sense, but it didn't evolve to be efficient and effective for what we actually needed.
Yeah. That makes sense. I got a couple more books unless you got.
No, you're good.
Okay, so the other most influential books during this time period. So I had Traction, Buy Back Your Time, and then these books, $100 Million Offers and $100 Million Leads by Alex Hormozy. Do you know who that is? / have you read those?
Alex Hormozy is one of my favorite thinkers in the world.
Have you read these books?
No.
You should.
Why?
So it's the most amount of value you will get condensed into like a 2-hour read.
Okay.
Or audiobook.
Is it like Grant Cardone style, where it's just zinger after zinger after zinger, just full of actionable or
this is super actionable. It's kind of like Traction and Buy Back Your Time, as it's an instruction manual that you will go revisit and you will not be able to implement all of it right now. So the idea with like $100 million offers is like, how do you actually know what you're selling and how do you offer it in a way that makes sense? In which we realized, dude, me and Dane were doing just across the board all these random different services and different things. There was no clarity, no like alignment. It's like you have one offer, and you sell it to one avatar,
Mhm.
right?
I do need to read it because that's the downfall of us. So when we rebranded, so 2019, 2020, we rebranded. We had Rarebird Investor Network instead of Investor Lab. So the events we were putting on were under our name. So everyone associated the events with our company.
Yep.
So we changed the name to that. And then we rebranded all of property management, acquisitions, and brokerage. Okay, then how do you market it? So we have really good branding in Investor Lab. We have really good branding in brokerage, property management, and acquisitions. But what's our pitch to the world?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, and we never figured it out. We never shipped marketing. So
It's impossible to build a business if you don't know what the offer is.
Exactly. We literally had no clue what is our offer. And so in Investor Lab, we took it away from our name. And when we built those, we never asked for anything. We've never asked for anything. So why do you want to create an event where you have 100 plus people coming to your events and you don't tell them what it is that you want?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's crazy.
Dumb.
Yeah.
Stupid. And then you build an organization that you don't know what's the tip of the spear, what's the back of the spear.
Yeah, people just know you guys do real estate stuff.
Yeah, and Jan was so good when we interviewed him, and he's like, I just got really clear. And then all of a sudden people, and I'm not complaining. We've got deals brought to us, and I brought lenders and brokers.
It still works because you're doing something.
Omnipresence has been created.
Yeah.
But the efficiency, like, you can do things with a purpose, and you can get significantly more value when you have the purpose. Or you can do things just to do them, and if you do them right, that will create value.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we experienced, because our offer originally was like, we'll just help you do any real estate thing because we've done so many deals and blah, blah, blah. Like, now it's like, no, our offer is helping people build wealth through real estate, through buying their first next rental property and building and scaling their portfolio. And we're going to provide 100% of everything you need to do this between agents, advisors, lenders, and we're going to do it all at the cost of what you would pay a normal real estate agent who doesn't know any of that. And we've helped hundreds of people do this already. And we've done it ourselves time and time and time again, all at the same cost. So now it's like, why would anyone not do that if they're wanting to buy it? And it's way easier to like communicate that to someone, because like, if you want to buy your first or next rental property, we will help you do it and give you everything you need for the same cost as everyone else with 20 times more value.
Yes.
And now it's like clear.
Yes. Yes.
Because you probably saw us go through that transition too. I don't know if you noticed what we were doing as we were doing it and like how across the board we were.
I saw you figure out how to get into your zone of genius. And a lot of what we're running up to is that, and I can't remember what book gets into the zone of genius, but that's really what it is. When you buy back your time, you're buying back your time, so you put more time into your zone of genius. And when you're in your zone of genius, you are in alignment, you are clear what your offer is, you are clear what your value add opportunity is, and then you're clear to communicate through that level. So I absolutely love that. I definitely do not want to leave this without talking about my favorite author, Benjamin Hardy.
Okay.
Personality isn't permanent. Who, not how. Who, not how for business owners.
Yes.
Any level.
So I have that on my nightstand right now. I need to reread it because you would recommend, I'm assuming that I do, because I read it the first time when it was just me on my own. And I was like, title says it all. Who, not how. Don't do the work yourself. And then now we have employees and a team and all this stuff. I was like, I should probably reread that.
Skim it.
Yeah.
You get it. He does a really good job of bringing stories into play, and I don't know that you need those stories because you have them real life examples now. Personality Isn't Permanent. It's one of the best books around ever by far.
What's the takeaways from that? I should go read that still.
It's the whole idea of focusing on it becoming someone else. So focus. We do change. The thought that we don't change as human beings and our personalities do not change is
well, that's what Gabe
wrong.
was telling. Hamill was telling us when we interviewed him. He's like, if you don't look back at like 5 to 10 years and you're a little bit embarrassed by who you were, like that's a bad sign. Like you should be changing it.
Yeah, in the story he talked about how we met. We met Ben that night.
Oh, okay.
The next night.
Yeah.
And it's literally, again, old information versus new. You have new psychological, scientific evidence that shows our personality does change.
Yeah.
And I love Ben. So he went to Clemson just to get his doctorate, just so he could be a doctor, but he's an author. And the reason he did that is because what he's writing on, he needs the scientific element of it based on how he does it. So he's a very spiritual person, religiously oriented, but then he brings the science into it as well within the stories. And so you're just talking about how you focusing praying, meditating, whatever it is that you do changes you.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, Compound Effect, significantly good book, not by
I've
him.
read that one. Yeah.
But the first one, Willpower Doesn't Work, was Ben's first book that I read, but that talks about your environment, right? So what are you thinking of? What rooms are you going into? Where do you, right? So what are
remove
you,
all the junk food from your house so you change the environment and you're
yes,
not
the subconscious.
not
How are
sitting there
you
to eat there.
training your subconscious?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Last note I have on books I was into. So that other book, $100 Million Leads. You should really go read both of these. You'll love it. If you like Alex Hormozy, this is his years of thinking condensed down.
Okay.
$100 Million Leads. I do not know how we did any business before reading this book. We were just sitting and waiting for people to talk to us one day, and I don't know. I literally don't know how we did any deals. But it's just literally like, how do you attract the person that you need? And like, how do you reach out to them? How do you present your offer? How do you communicate it to them? And he goes through like all the different ways that you can do it, like one-on-one, one-to-many. You can run ads, you can do content, you can, all these different ways you can actually advertise. He breaks it down into a how-to manual, which is like the most insane thing. Like he has every single possible thing that you can do broken down into like third grade reading level. And it's like super actionable.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like another book I've read like 8 times, and it blows my mind every single time I read it because it's so much work to implement it all. But even just bits and chunks are insane. And the biggest takeaway from these books is like people start doing the right things, and rather than doing more of it, they go start that next business or start this other thing rather than like doubling down and increasing what they're doing, which sounds like was what you did.
A lot of people do that.
You were
Yeah.
like, buying property is great. This is going
Mhm.
great. Let me open a brokerage. Let me do all this other stuff.
Yeah, because you see value, but you can't really quantify it.
And everything looks easier as you're not doing
Yes.
it, because you hit like a point where they're like, this is really hard. But the realisticness of all of it is it's all really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like every business is hard to grow, and you can make money doing any of them.
Right.
Because that's like everyone that comes and like talks to us, it's like they want to make money through real estate, and they conflate like now money and investing money, and then they want to get into the real estate space because they think it's really easy to make like now money. I'm like, you already own this business over here. You're doing this thing. Just do more of that and then invest your money in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're trying to just like change plans every 6 months, every year to something new because they're thinking their thing isn't working. And it's because they've learned just enough to realize like, oh, this is really hard. Then they go to the next thing and they spend all the time learning, and they're like, oh, this is also really hard.
It's the grass is greener problem.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Self-help, can't get past this. Own the Day, Own Your Life. So I was 285 pounds when I read that book and lost 80 pounds in a few months, or 4 or 5 months.
And what was the takeaway that made you do that?
Just wake up and own one day. And it's before the infinite game. So it's before that level of mindset. This was right before I joined GoBundance. It's right before I met Ben Hardy, Gabe, started kind of really changing my life. And so I was coming out of depression, but for me it was, I can just get up, own one day. Like just own the day, literally own the day. What is your routine going to be? Because I'm not really a routine guy. And then when I joined GoBundance, Miracle Morning, read that, and then started realizing it again, trade-offs, right? So, okay, so I never really liked getting up early, but I always kind of got up at 6 or 7. Yeah, but what if I woke up at 5? And what if I didn't start working until 7 or 8? What does that do for me? And that's when I learned about myself, right? When I kind of learned more about life. Because up to that point, I was just a worker. I was a worker all my life. Ever since I got my paper route at the age of 12, I've been sleep deprived until that moment of 39, 40 years old. And so then when I actually started sleeping less to focus on myself, I actually learned who I was, and then kind of got out of the trees and started seeing the forest. And that's where my philosophy started really to grow, was when I got out of being the rat race, the worker. And this has nothing to do with financial stuff. This has to do with emotions, my own conversation in my head, my own emotional level of intelligence. And creating that space in my life is where all that was born. And then the evolution of that part of me that was born changed everything else in my life. Who I became as a leader, and then shortly after, so 2019 was a huge growth year, and then 2020 when COVID hit. So I look at reading Own the Day, Own Your Life, September of 2018 to then March 2020, and I remember it wasn't a level of fear that came, but it was, okay, uncertainty. And I went on a hike with one of my mentors who was actually coaching students, so a business owner, very high net worth business owner. He was a coaching student on the real estate side. And he just asked a couple things. And then that made me realize, oh yeah, I'm not who I was September 2018. I'm this guy of March 2020. And then that led into Facebook Lives every week for, over a year. And then that led into CE classes and rent control was coming. All these things were happening all at once. And that led me, and then I was on a commission. So that whole period of time, then he catapulted me into being a leader in our community. And that was a huge turning point for our business as well. Property management started growing. So kind of becoming that person. So getting out of the business to then work on me to then become the leader of that business, who now then can magnetize everything that we've created.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Any more books you got, or is that? I've shared all mine.
I'm only on page 306. And this isn't the subtle art of not giving fuck. This is another one of evolution. Like, so, but you also have to you can't care what people think to the level that it keeps you from taking action. But you also have to be aware of what your action does to other people. And so I like the infinite mindset, the awareness, the trade-off mindset that goes along with not giving a fuck. Because it's a more holistic view. Rather than just saying F you to the world, I am who I am. Yeah, but what is the impact on the other people? And how can you communicate in a way to show a level of understanding, but still be you and be authentic? So that super helpful.
I mean, my main goal with this, because we've thrown out a lot of books, is just to give people, and I hope we weren't rambling too much, but give some people some ideas of books we've read that have impacted our lives that we want to share with others.
I bet you will get comments, people. And people make me look smart. We're going to get comments. People appreciate this episode.
Yeah. So, I mean, my goal from this is like, hey, you guys can go grab one of these books we've shared, read it, and then take just one thing away from one of those books and try to implement it in your life and see what happens. Like that, the biggest thing that has changed my life is reading books and then doing what the book says.
Yeah.
One book can literally change your life. You can pay $15 and spend 4 hours and change your entire life.
Greatest form of intelligence is action.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I loved it when you guys brought that up this summer, because I was in that period of time I wasn't taking the action I wanted to take. Yeah. I wasn't not being inactive, but I did get a mindset shift 2 months ago where I started taking significantly more action.
Yes, if you think, that's what Gabe always says to me. It's kind of ingrained in my head, and that's the Napoleon Hill quote. But it's just like, if you're not taking action, what are you doing? He told me, like, you'd sit there and think about something for an hour that you could have just finished in 20 minutes had you just taken action and stopped thinking so much.
One other book, The Road Less Stupid. So it's written by
Dane, you need this one.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
It's written by Keith Cunningham, but it's based off of Charlie Munger's teachings. And this is where I learned the concept of the thinking chair, which is, for me, it's hiking or trail running. So thinking, the art of getting your thoughts out of your head. There's a difference between those thoughts rattling around in your head and getting them out of your head.
So you write them down? What do you do?
Yeah, write them down, notes. For me, it's now, how do I communicate those thoughts to my second in command so they don't get lost or forgotten?
You probably send them a Siri message that is hard to decipher.
It's funny. I remember we were at Limitless, the first Limitless, and I met Scotty in the wave pool area, and I was like, "Are you the guy who communicates like a fifth grader?" in our group text. First time I ever met him in person. It's the first thing I said. He's like, "Yeah, that's me." I realized it just yesterday. I was like, "Oh, he's using voice to text." And that's why I think he communicates like a fifth grader. And I have been communicating like a fifth grader since I got my new iPhone.
Yours is just incoherent half the time because you're probably holding it too far away from yourself. And
no, I
pick
mumble.
Up what you're saying.
I mumble.
Okay,
yeah,
because
I'm a mumbler.
Like, I don't think that's what you were trying to say.
I could be a good mumble rapper.
But anyway, if you guys like this podcast, let us know. Shoot us a message. If you want to come on and talk about deals, you can shoot us a message and tell us, and you can come on probably.
The Way of the Iceman, Wim Hof, breathing in cold. Cold. I love
Wim
cold.
Hof is cool.
Yeah.
And then our one ask for you is to share this podcast, any episode you like, with someone else you know that you think would like it. It would be a huge help to us. Gabe and Dane, if you guys listen, you guys can give us feedback too. this is going to be Gabe's least favorite episode probably, but that's all right. Any final words, Mike?
No.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.